Hello, my name's Gavin, this is Genre Books, and this is the fourth of my occasional series of videos, 50 Zanes of Grey, where I am endeavouring to read an arbitrary number of books by the great Western writer. I'm taking this roughly in chronological order, and today we are looking at the last of the Plainsmen, which came out in 1908. And I'm looking at this on its own today, so maybe a bit of a shorter video. Previous videos have done 2 or 3 books. So I did the Ohio River trilogy, where he talks about his ancestor, Betty Zane, and her family. I did 2 books on baseball, proving he's not just about writing westerns. And one of those baseball books was also part of the Ken Ward series of adventure books, and I spoke about the other 3 of those books last time. But this book is a bit of an oddity. It is a fictionalized account of Zane Grey's own adventures with Buffalo Jones in Arizona in 1907. Who is Buffalo Jones? Well, fortunately, one of my Easter Hay-on-Wye purchases is already proving its worth. This is volume 2 of the 3 volumes I bought of the Encyclopedia of Frontier Biography by Dan L. Thrapp. I think there are about 4,500 entries in all 3 volumes, and Buffalo Jones warrants about a page and a half, so not too bad going for double-spaced small print. Charles Jesse Jones was born in 1844 and died in 1919. Following his time at university, he went west at the age of 21 and settled in Kansas. He got married, he went broke, and he started hunting buffalo for a living. He never calculated how many buffalo he killed, but it numbered in the thousands. By 1886, he had made the cognitive leap that this was probably a bad thing. And he didn't kill that many animals from this point on. He understood, probably before a number of other people, that the buffalo was actually facing extinction at the hands of man. And his career from that point pivots to one of preservation. You could not call what he does environmentalism in the modern sense. His actions are impetuous, a little bit ham-fisted, probably by today's standards frowned upon, but I think it's important to see at this point his heart at least is in the right place. It is much more about conservation. He wants to make sure that the species survives. And this leads on to the same feelings about other species that were under threat from the expansion westward. As a hunter of buffaloes, he was one of hundreds, probably thousands. As a specialist in buffalo conservation and preservation, he becomes an oddity, and this is where he actually gets his name, Buffalo Jones. He has the nickname not for the amount of buffalo he slaughtered, but for the amount that he saved. As I've said, the methods he used were crude. There is a lot of capturing the animals to move them to places where they can be guarded. there is also the way of raising funds to do this is some of those animals captured are sold onto zoos. But I should imagine some of these zoos keeping the animals in captivity probably didn't do the animals any good, but better possibly than being slaughtered, and also made them available to a much larger group of people to observe them and perhaps get the idea that these species shouldn't be driven to extinction. He has his own adventures. He goes to the Great Slave Lake in the far north, and there is an unsuccessful attempt to capture and return some musk ox to his ranch and to zoos. I say ultimately unsuccessful. They managed to capture them, but they were not able to bring them back. There were many issues on the way back, some of which are detailed in this book. He is a big enough name at this point for someone to write a biography about him, and he becomes known on the national stage. And in 1902, Theodore Roosevelt makes him the first gamekeeper of the newly created Yellowstone National Park. He also established another ranch, this time in Garden City in Kansas, a city which incidentally he helped to found. And this is the second real life personage appearing in a Zane Grey book who has actually founded a city. So these are, dynamic, forceful personalities with big dreams. Much later, he starts another ranch, which is more experimental, on the Kaibab Plateau. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, north of the Colorado in Arizona. And it's here that the book begins. Zane Grey doesn't write about himself very much in the book at all, but he has taken the trip there to the nearest train station, which is many days' ride away from the ranch, and then treks to the ranch itself alongside Jones and some Mormon guides. The Mormons here are not villains for once, so that's something. So this book is not a biography, but it has biographical elements. It's not a piece of travel writing, but travel writing is involved. There is a little bit of a lot of things. There are comedic scenes with the cast of ranch hands that Jones is employing. There are passages where we see Zane Grey's by now familiar gift in describing the landscape. There are scenes of excitement when they are hunting and trapping, occasionally having to kill animals. There is some fairly elementary conservation sermonizing. And there are even flashbacks to Jones's extensive career, given through the medium of telling stories around the campfire. I can only think that it was these experiences with Jones which not only gave the material for this book, but also provided a lot of the material for one of the Ken Ward adventure books, The Young Lion Hunter. A good portion of this book is taken up with hunting cougars and capturing them alive if possible. As a piece of what is ostensibly non-fiction, although you can tell it's heavily fictionalized, there are no antagonists here. As I've said, the Mormons that appear are just Mormons and guides, not antagonists for a change. The Native Americans as well, not portrayed as antagonists, and not nearly so much of the pejorative language that you can find expressed by the characters in certainly the Ohio River trilogy. I think what is interesting is this focus on conservation and preservation, which for 1908 is, I would suggest, somewhat unusual. We have seen this in other Zane Grey books, notably The Young Forester, where Ken Ward drops the occasional sermon about the benefits of forestry and forest husbandry. But whereas in that book, these are ideas espoused by a younger, idealistic character, here we have them in the mouth of Buffalo Jones, a quite literal poacher turned gamekeeper. It gives a feeling of a voice of authority, of seniority, not establishment, but Western frontier establishment, a well-known and respected voice, and seems to imply that conservation and preservation has more of a culture and a history than it actually had at that point. It's a very different method of getting the message across, but it has the same aims. Buffalo Jones is very much tough love when it comes to conservation. He treats his horses and his dogs, they're certainly working animals, they are not pets. He does love them, but he is not mollycoddling them. His interest in the natural world around him certainly rubs off on Zane Grey, and I think probably influenced some of his landscape descriptions. His focus on the tiniest parts of the landscape, desert flowers, small animals. I also think that his time spent with Buffalo Jones, putting what was a college man and a dentist into real life adventures, actually going out and walking the walk on the frontier, helps his descriptions of adventure both in this book and in subsequent books. We have no Hudson River cowboy here writing about the West from the comforts of his New York apartment. What we experience here over and again is wilderness. You realize how far they are from civilization by the journey they take to get there, and it's emphasized by the long journey he has to take to get back to catch a train back east. But as well as spatial wilderness, they are really out of time. His descriptions of the Grand Canyon, which they are very near, are, as you would expect, beautiful. If you realize that for a number of readers, this is their first experience of the Grand Canyon. At the point that this book was written, the Grand Canyon was not yet a national park. There were no hordes of tourists descending on the Grand Canyon. But as well as the space, as I've said, there is a solitude in time as well. Buffalo Jones is clumsily ahead of his time. It is not how we would do things now, but it is certainly not how things were done then. Like I said, he's no environmentalist, but he is a conservationist. And notwithstanding the clumsiness of some of the operation, notwithstanding the amount of buffalo that he had personally killed, he is also probably the reason we still have the American buffalo today. The endangered species on display in this book is the Plainsman. It is the character. People like Buffalo Jones and his ranch hands. At the time this book was written, they were less than a decade away from the First World War and the technological progress that war brings with it, the expansion, the industrialization, the transport links, the communication links. There is not going to be a wilderness for much longer. I think you can discern from the book the affection and respect that Gray has for Jones, but also the recognition that that time has now passed. I think what we'll see is more of a looking to the past in the next books from Zane Grey. I haven't read them yet, so this is still supposition. It feels very odd writing about things nostalgically when I'm actually looking at a physical book here, which is 75 years old, and at the time this edition came out, the work itself was already 42 years old. So we're looking through a number of lenses here backwards. However, for my next Zane Grey videos, I will not be ploughing the Zane Grey furrow by my lonesome. With the advent of June on the Range, hopefully many other people will be reading some Zane Grey as well. And I'm trying to get 4 books of his read in the coming month. We'll see how that turns out. Until next time, bye.